it's weird, but it's kind of a life dream to be preaching a UU sermon about death. And now I'm feeling like this should be a whole series. I mean, that might be a lot for you, but I've just been really excited about this. So I'm going to open with a fairly long excerpt from Gabriel Garcia Marquez's incredible work of literature, 100 Years of Solitude. She was tying a colorful string of chatter together, commenting on things from so many separate places and so many different times, so that when her great-great-granddaughter Amaranta returned from school and Aureliano grew tired of the encyclopedia, they would find her sitting on her bed talking to herself and lost in a labyrinth of dead people. "Fire!" she shouted once in terror, and for an instant, panic spread throughout the house. But she was describing the burning of a barn that she had witnessed when she was 4 years old. She finally mixed up the past with the present in such a way that in the 2 or 3 waves of lucidity that she had before she died, no one knew for certain whether she spoke about what she felt or what she remembered. Little by little, she was shrinking, turning into a fetus, becoming mummified in life, to the point that in her last months, she was a cherry raisin lost inside of her nightgown. And in the arm that she always kept raised looked like the paw of a Marimona monkey. She looked like a newborn old woman. One Palm Sunday, they went into the bedroom while Fernanda was at church and carried Ursula out by the neck and ankles. "Poor great-great-grandmother," Amaranta said. "She died of old age." Ursula was startled. "I'm alive," she said. "You can see," Amaranta said, suppressing her laughter, "that she is not even breathing." "I'm talking," Ursula shouted. "She can't even talk," Aureliano said. "She died like a cricket." Then Ursula gave in to the evidence. "My God," she exclaimed in a low voice. "So this is what it's like to be dead." She started an endless, stumbling, deep prayer that lasted more than 2 days, and by Tuesday had degenerated into a hodgepodge of requests to God and bits of practical advice. Her granddaughter was certain they would find her dead from one moment to the next, because she noticed a certain confusion in nature. The roses smelled like a goosefoot. A pod of chickpeas fell down, and the beans lay on the ground in a perfect geometrical pattern in the shape of a starfish. And one night, she saw a row of luminous orange discs pass across the sky. From 100 Years of Solitude. Even as a child, much like Kate, I harbored serious critique of Unitarian Universalism's response to death. I wanted answers, not more questions, not faced with all these well-meaning adults fearing inculcating me, asking me, "Well, what do you think?" And just returning to this endless cycle, "What do you think? What do you think?" Even now, in preparation for this sermon, I searched for Unitarian Universalist responses to death and came across a brand new adult RE curriculum on the topic. At last, I thought, some answers. The title of the curriculum? Facing Death with Life. Oh, back to life. It's too milquetoast for me. It's too glossy. I don't want to face death with life. I want to face death itself. I relate to Kate's personal story also of a fixation on death when I was around 9 or 10. Laying awake, never sleeping, contemplating the void, which felt like rendering my life meaningless. I would cry. I stopped going to school. I tried to stop going to school. For quite a few months of existential pain and crippling fear. I'll never forget that time. And even now, as a family minister, I offer pastoral care to children. And in all my years of providing this service, the vast majority of children who I have worked with have been in the 4th grade. See, that's the time around age 9, age 10, when children are fully able to comprehend both the finality and the universality of death. They often come into my office with other types of anxieties about school or something else, but I will tell you it always comes down to that topic. And like Kate, I am also now currently struggling to create a container for big questions from my own 4-year-old sons. Questions, and to try and provide answers that don't send us all spinning off into terrifying paralysis. I mean, I kid you not. Even as I wrote these words the other day, I had just overheard my son ask my husband if Obi-Wan Kenobi has gone to God. Followed by, but Dad, where is that? I mean, where is God? Is it a twinkle in your eye? Who was I, by the way, before I was born? I mean, let's just say this is an overwhelming stage of life. And it's what often gets people into doors of Unitarian Universalist congregations, these terrifying questions from children. My own sister was very precocious, morbid child at age 4 or 5. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here today. The storylines of Gabriel Garcia's body of work feature ghosts. Ghosts who propel the narrative forward. Hauntings in his books are not a source of terror, but of momentum. The dead tend to stick around, to bless various couplings that perpetuate the family lineage, or to disrupt events that threaten true love, or threaten the continuation of this family. I welcome this approach to the dead, inviting them to haunt our decisions, to serve perhaps as a committee for the way we choose our own adventures. And sometimes in this wilderness experience, I wonder if we can evoke ancestors from this congregation and ask what they would do in this moment, and let that guide us and bring us momentum. And whether you honor Samhain, those days between October 31st and November 2nd, when pagans believe the veil between living and dead has thinned, and the ancestors visit the living, or you recognize All Saints' Day, a Catholic ritual honoring those who have died, or Dia de los Muertos, a Mexican holiday honoring ancestors by creating an ofrenda, an altar, and feasting on their favorite foods. Or perhaps you are a transcendentalist who sees the trees unburdening themselves in a glorious death knell, and you see that as ultimate inspiration. After all, if we are to look at the autumn leaves, it's like the canopy that has enfolded us all summer long is now breathing a long, raspy, final breath. But contained within that breath is the most beautifully wise sentence ever spoken. So to everything there is a season, and this is the season of honoring death. And that's important to me, because while Unitarian Universalists tend to spend our energy celebrating life, the gift of life, and improving life for others, I think we must annually claim a religious holy day to honor and spiritualize death, and I intend to do that here. Many of my reasons for doing this are practical, because when they are alive, people should know they will be honored and they will be remembered here in their congregation long after they have left it. And they should rest in knowing that day will come around. And their children can rest in knowing that day will come around when we will invoke that person's memory, their name. Their stories will be shared. Taking comfort in the knowledge and resting in the inevitability that their life will return to the congregation's heart each and every year, that is part of what we can do to ensure a good death, however the dying happens. And our Unitarian Universalist celebrations of life are some of our most evangelistic opportunities. They are times when, rather than focusing on what comes after, we collectively look back at the person's life in joy and love, fondly remembering the funny, the beautiful, the inspiring gifts of the life that was lived. And that's nice. I don't want to mess with that. I think that's a great thing that we do. But what of the death? And what of the rest of us? Historically, I often speak of Unitarian Universalism as a teenager, its voice still cracking with uncertainty, always looking for ways to rebel and anger an authoritative presence wherever it may be. And while our celebrations of life are beautiful, they are positive and healing, there is something we are missing before moving on, a necessary step in the dying, deathing, mourning, and healing process. Some of you know in 2014, I received the Foz Fellowship. This is a program and institute at Meadville Theological Seminary to study something related to religious education for an entire year. And I spent that year studying various death and mourning rituals. Ultimately, I developed a kind of a Shiva experience for Unitarian Universalists. I'm open to better names than this, but right now it's just called uumourningandhealing.com. You can go there. It's a website. One significant feature of the UU rituals of mourning is that they happen in the home. And the family takes 6 days off of work to spend receiving members of the UU congregation or friends or family in that time. When I first presented this at General Assembly, there were gasps in the crowd. 6 days off of work. Now this is an important feature of the mourning rituals because it represents a break from secular life. And there's no other Unitarian Universalist observance that demands our attention apart from the secular world. All other religious observances adapt to our secular schedule. But this is an opportunity to truly rest in the loss. To take 6 full days gives the family reprieve from the tyranny of returning to normalcy before they are ready, offering a more intentional and peaceful path through grief. Because we know there is society's time and there is God's time, or the soul's time. And God's time will be claimed one way or the other. Each evening, or at any convenient time, people will gather for a worship service in the home each of these 6 days. The worship experiences draw from our 6 Unitarian Universalist sources. That's why there are 6 days. And so the first is the day of wonder, followed by the day of prophets. Then comes the day of ecumenical wisdom, the day of scripture, the day of reason, and finally the day of returning to earth. The liturgies for each of these days include UU hymns, prayers, poems, and litanies from each of those 6 sources, along with focused storytelling about the deceased. It is 6 days because each life is monumental, unfathomably huge, and could never be contained within a couple of hours of a memorial service, and of course cannot be contained in 6 days either. And for the one who is dying, for the one who is dying to know that your family, your friends, and your congregation will surround your house with photos of you, will spend time singing all your favorite songs, reading your favorite poets and authors. They will light a chalice and invoke your memory, tell stories about you, and offer each other comfort. Well, that will offer comfort to the dying as well. For them to know that they will be held and comforted even in those days after death. In this way, we can imagine our death will not be a source of confusion and anxiety for ourselves and our family. Like the 110-year-old matriarch Ursula in 100 Years of Solitude, it was a source of confusion and anxiety for her, but instead we can prepare for our death, face it with wonderment, with awe, perhaps even with a UU ethic of gratitude. We can take our teenage religion and give it an assignment, a homework assignment. Face death. Create a religious response to death, to grief, not just life, but really face death. I know our faith can do more than it does. It can inspire hope and spark the love of community within the most challenging moments. And I know 6 days can seem like a lot. But 100 years from now, this UU mourning process will be totally normal to all of us. That's what I keep telling people. This is how we make a home for ghosts, for spirits, for the love that sustains far beyond a single life. But before all that, before we make a home for each other, for the dying person, and for the death itself, we do know that we have so much to do on our own and together to craft a life worth dying for. May it be so. Amen.